Welcome to From Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. This is a space for honest conversation, for moments when something inside feels heavy or disconnected. Each episode features practitioners and wellness spaces sharing the intention behind their work so you can feel into what resonates and discover support you can experience directly. Wherever you're arriving from today, you are welcome here. Welcome to another episode From Loneliness to Overflow with Matina. Today's guest is a beautiful soul who is rooted into this amazing wisdom that we behold in our Mother Earth. When we are connected with nature, when we are connected and understand the power of every element, that is how we show up in the world in an aligned fashion. And when we're disconnected, it's harder to align ourselves. And that is what I actually learned from Corinne when I met her at her home and she had this beautiful experience in her backyard. Nonetheless, welcome, Corinne.
Thank you. Thanks, Matina. Happy to be here.
I am so excited for this conversation today to have the wisdom that pours out of you to be shared with everyone who is ready to connect to themselves, ready to connect with nature and all the elements that we are a part of, very fortunately. Um, with that said, please introduce yourself, Corinne.
Okay, thanks, Matina. My name is Corinne Van Kampen. I am a retired scientist. And after I retired, I opened a wellness business because that has been my passion for over 20 and it became my passion when I was diagnosed with a very serious illness. I had cancer and I was given a very low chance of surviving. So and that was actually also the moment of the most loneliness in my life. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But since then, I worked through my own illness, came back from it, and I'm thriving now and doing what I love, which is helping other people and helping show them what's possible by really listening to themselves, listening to their bodies, and bringing in a lot of elements of what's out there and holding it within and making themselves feel better and do better and be better.
Feel better, do better, and be better. That is a beautiful conclusion of your own journey that we are going to unpack here today. And I'm excited for that conversation because I really feel that there's a lot of gems that you learned throughout your journey that our listeners can learn from and grow from today. So, with that said, what was your loneliness or disconnection moment that actually led you into overflow, Corinne?
The biggest moment was probably when I was diagnosed with cancer about 24 years ago, and I had support from my husband. My kids were very small, but everybody else, it's almost like everybody else scattered. And they didn't know what to say to me. They didn't know what to talk about. They avoided me. So that was it was a sad moment. However, I have spent a lot of my life alone, but not lonely. So I did what I usually do, which is I just pulled up my socks and fought through my illness. And along the way, met some beautiful people, met some other people who were struggling, met a few people who didn't make it. Sorry. And that made me realize that, this is what I want to do. So I was a research scientist by training, so working in pharmaceuticals, helping people from a distance, like a very far, far away distance. So I wanted to do more. And because I am still here and I recovered from my illness, I wanted to give something back to the universe. And part of my treatment, part of my recovery was meeting other people who were into the wellness, energy healing spectrum and realm. And they showed me through example and through conversation that a lot more things were possible than what I'd even imagined before I got ill. I became ill. And so I set myself on a path of learning, discovery, and training. And I trained to be a shamanic healer. And I trained in some other modalities, including Reiki, that I believe a lot of people are familiar with, but also iridology, which is more science based. And I wanted to do what I could to help others, but I had bills to pay. I had children to raise. I had a husband to raise as well. And so I've kind of put my that dream, I guess you could say, that passion on the back burner. I mean, I still helped family and friends, but I put that on the back burner for quite a while until I was able to realize what I'm doing now, which is my dream, which is what I'm most passionate about, which is helping other people. And it doesn't necessarily need to be people who are cancer survivors. It can just be anybody who's not feeling quite like they want to feel. So that's and the overflow came with the response I especially in the last 2 years, but the response that, came out of meeting a lot of wonderful people over the last couple of years, and, the overflow and part of the reason I waited to do this podcast until this year was the overflow was starting really picking up momentum last year. Things are truly overflowing for me now, and I'm so grateful and so happy.
I love that for you. And you said something so profound just now, which is where you felt scattered. And yes, your journey was connected to the experience of cancer, but there's
Mhm,
so many people in this world who feel scattered, who
mhm,
don't know what to do. And similar to you, just pull up their socks and go about their day-to-day life in survival mode.
yeah, absolutely.
Your journey, from what I'm hearing and catching upon, is went from survival mode into deep reverence of yourself and understanding your body, your thoughts, your emotions, all of those things into what you are now living, the overflow of things. Yet for those people who are still stuck and still feel that they have to pull up their socks and just live day by day, make it another day, and feel truly scattered from the inside, what would you want to say to them?
I think I would say to them that the hardest thing is to realize that we as an individuals, especially women, because we're the caregivers. Most of my clients, most of my people I help are women. I would tell them that it's so important to just take baby steps and take that 10 minutes to for yourself and then build it to, 20 minutes where you go for a walk and just try to build on that, and it is very hard for people who have little children or who are starting their careers and lots of other external forces pushing and pulling on us. So I would say to all those people who are feeling scattered that it is more than possible, more than possible for them to find an anchor to help themselves rebuild or build further into feeling more grounded, more secure, more connected to not only themselves and their family and friends, but also to the universe, to the earth. I'm very much into nature, so that's a very big part of what I do, but it can just start with baby steps, small steps.
We dismiss small steps so quickly because our mind is like, "Oh, that cannot be it." We love have these complicated steps, and then we can tell ourselves, "No, this is worth it because it's hard." Now, for someone who lived a very logical, scientific life in going into energy and healing and other modalities, how was that journey for you?
It was a real eye opener and it did take those small steps. A lot of things that I learned were I was kind of, "Oh, that's complicated," or "That's" it's not that it's too hard, it's just complicated, or it's something so different, so apart from what I'd grown up with and what I'd had spent most of my career doing. So it was a matter of, again, just taking those small moments and looking into, maybe I should try meditating, or maybe I could try grounding and see what happens. And the amazing thing that happened for me was as I did these things more and more, like grounding or a little bit of meditation, it's not that it was super easy, but it is very simple and straightforward. And the more I did it, the more I looked forward to doing it. And I'm not talking about spending hours or even an hour to start with, or even now, I don't even spend an hour sitting cross-legged on your floor, burning candles and incense, and that's nothing for me. It was nothing like that. It was literally just putting my feet on the ground, closing my eyes, and just thinking about what I wanted and bringing what I wanted into my life.
Mm, mhm.
I know it sounds really easy, but it is quite simple. It just takes practice, it takes intent and belief, which are the cornerstones of what I teach everyone that comes through my doors.
Intention is very important to have that clarity as to what you're actually hoping for, looking for, creating with your time that you are starting to believe or opening yourself up for a new belief system that maybe that is possible for me too. Maybe I can live this way for myself as well. Now, what I'm hearing, Corinne, and it's very subtle, but it's very key to mention here is you not only started doing and taking these little steps, you had an intention of understanding and healing your body and wanting to understand and be in in trial. Like literally just trying out new things, figuring out what do I like, what don't I like, what sits well with me, what doesn't.
Mhm.
And it's being that curious child who's just playing and understanding as to what is happening to her. With that said, when you were playing and discovering all of these new modalities and new ways of living and new ways of experiencing, what was it in nature that called you that you really deepened your understanding in?
That's a great question. I would say, it's gonna sound very simple, but a lot of this is very simple. The wind, trees, the grass, just the sounds, and, I mean, I'm very fortunate not to live in the city, I live in the countryside, but I didn't move here until years after my recovery, and that's part of the reason we moved here was I just this was the spot. This was the place for me to put down roots. And that's as simple as that. The wind, the sun, the moon, the trees, the water. There's a stream near our house. And, seeing animals. Whenever you see an animal in nature, I'm not talking about, not talking like dogs or cats, but I'm talking about other animals that are not domesticated. It's such a blessing. So, what I learned was to pay attention to a lot more of what's out there. Because before I got ill, I was going Mach 2 with my hair on fire. I had a family, I had kids, I had a house, I had a career, I had it all, or so I thought, but then my illness was the wake-up call. Not because the universe was telling me you don't have it all, but there was another path for me, and that's the path I'm on now.
Right. For those that are listening, there are 5 elements, and I would love for you to speak on them a little bit and share your wisdom around them, which is earth, which is air, which is fire, which is sun,
Water.
water, and
Yep.
ether.
Okay.
How have you learned to play with all of these elements, and which element do you say, other than air and earth that you mentioned already, do you feel most grounded to or connected to?
I would say besides air and earth, I would say I feel very connected to the water, but it's not necessarily just the feel of the water, it's the sight of the water, and it's the smell, and it's the sound. So, I bought my daughter one of those pictures, where it casts the picture on, and it had the sound of it was a waterfall. It had the sound of a waterfall in the background, and didn't know why at the time. Also, we have a picture in our front hall that's a waterfall because Hamilton is the waterfall city. So, that was the additional awakening for me when we moved here. And there's a stream near our house, and just sitting there listening to the water. And something I've also discovered mostly more when I came into the country was the power of the moon and the sun. So those celestial bodies that are not of the earth, they're out there. And then I've also incorporated what I learned when I was recovering, when I was training, is I've incorporated some of my indigenous ancestry that I wasn't aware I was of indigenous ancestry until I was recovering from my illness because I'm adopted. Technically, my loneliness, if you want to call it loneliness on an energetic level, started when I was two days old, when I was taken away from my mom. So it's been a long journey, but we focused on the peak of it, which took 38 years for me to get to the peak. But now it's just abundance and overflow because I appreciate every little thing that's out there. And I know that sounds very contrite. Some people will be like, "Yeah, yeah, we all feel that way." Most people don't feel that way. I didn't feel that way. And I go to bed every night before I fall asleep, and I say thank you. I don't list all the people that I'm thanking, I just say thank you. And I've been doing that ever since I was doing my chemo treatment for my cancer. So, and that's an example of a small step.
I'm getting emotional as you're speaking because there is a true essence of pain for someone who was just to be taken away from a mom and to not know that part of you,
Mhm.
then to discover that part of you and to build again a relationship with your roots. Can you share a little bit more about what each element means to you and how you build a relationship with it?
With the 5 elements you mentioned? Okay. So with the earth, it's really just tending the earth, respecting the earth, tending it. So we have gardens. I walk on the earth. I use it for my grounding practices quite a lot of the time. The air is, for example, at the end of the year last year, I always open my front door and I open my back door. And you let the air push out what's from last year, and then it brings in what's coming in for this year. So it's really a matter of having that awareness and that sense of what's around you, which is hard for a lot of us. I didn't do it until I was recovering from my illness. In terms of fire, fire is a way we connect with, it's not just warmth, it's a way we connect with our spirits. So some people call them angels, some people, I call them guides and spirits. I also connect with my ancestors when I light a candle. I always light a candle when I'm working on a healing session with somebody. I also have full moon ceremony. We always light a fire when the weather allows it. And just so that's where fire comes in. The other one, ether. Ether is kind of that force that's out there. That's what I believe it is. I don't know. I'm not talking about ether like alcohol. I'm talking about ether
The
being that force.
nothingness.
So if you're in, and if you're, I mean, it's literally, and I know it's going to sound kind of corny, but it's like in Star Wars, there's a force. There's something in between all the cells, all the blades of grass, all the grains of sand, and all the cells in our body, all the people in the world. There's a force between us. A lot of us don't recognize. We're just too busy. We're too unaware. So and I bring that into my life every day when I'm thanking everyone and everything, and really just spending time with people. That's where the feelings creates part of that force that's so important for all of us to have. Those feelings and emotions we have. That's all contained in that life force that's around us. And
And
that's
then
what
you
I use
already
when I'm
mentioned
feeling.
water.
I'm sorry?
You
Pardon?
already mentioned water.
Yes. Yeah. And water's also, I mean, water is life. We can't live without water. And so I know that sounds, again, very simple, but water is also, it's the sound and the smell and water looks like. It's not just drinking it. So, yeah, we're very lucky.
Wow, there is so much joy. There is so much awareness. There's so much stillness in just even if you reflect for a second. And then, yes, the logical mind will say, oh, a second is not enough or a minute is not enough. Well, if you start there, that is enough
Mhm.
because you didn't have that before. And that's
Exactly.
really the message that I'm getting from you, Corinne, as you're sharing is start very simple.
Start
Have an
small.
yes, yes, absolutely. And that brings the freedom and that opens a door and that opens a direction for us to grow up in and feel very connected through.
Mhm.
With you opening yourself up to all of the elements of nature, with
Mhm.
you understanding that you have an indigenous background, how did you then root yourself back into your roots and understanding more as to the wisdom that indigenous people have and live by?
So what I tend to do, well, what I did during my training is I was actually trained for 6.5 years by a full blood Mohawk Native Indigenous woman and her husband. So that's when I discovered my roots, and what I've done to honor that since is learned as much as I can about not necessarily about my family specifically, but just, what does the culture embody? I go to powwows, I go to ceremonies, I participate, but I'm still a student. I will always be a student, and I like to share some of the wisdom that I pick up along the way with people I meet or as people I work with, through my business, but even people I meet for coffee or meet on the path when I'm hiking in the woods, or if there's that opportunity. I mean, it's just we're always gonna be a student of something. So that's how I use that, and I honor the full moon ceremonies I have and the equinox and solstice ceremonies. That's also honoring my past. And, I have different, how shall I say, different instruments that I use. I use singing bowls, I use tingshaws, I use sound, I use, um, drumming. All of that is very rooted in Indigenous cultures.
Yes, yes. I'm getting chills. Feels so good. It feels really like a homecoming. And that homecoming went through a very difficult period of your life where you discovered you had cancer, where you came across when people don't know what to say, don't know what to do, therefore they just excuse themselves, and that leaves you feeling scattered, to including more modalities, getting with connecting with aligned people, discovering more of yourself, connecting with nature, connecting with your roots, to now finally being in the overflow of serving others. Because what the message then truly becomes is, as much as you're the student, you become a teacher.
Absolutely. We're all teachers whether we realize it or not, but some of us are more active as teachers than others, but, there's always something to be learned, and there's always something we can share and teach someone else. And that I mean, that's part of the connectivity. That's the fiber one of the fibers that weaves could and should weave us all together, is that potential if we just take time to listen. Listen to ourselves, listen to other people, and just do what's best for us.
Absolutely, 1,000%. When we listen to the wisdom that we behold here, we are able to share and in a very authentic, raw way, without the mask, without the sugar coating or whatever else have you. Now, how are you now supporting people or women specifically, Corinne?
I would say I'm doing it mainly by offering my services and letting people know that I'm here. I'm not really I'm not on a selling campaign. I'm allowing people to come to me, and the word gets out. And I'm a big believer in word of mouth. I really believe in, people will, almost like that movie, if you build it, they will come. So I've opened my doors, so to speak, and I'm welcoming in whomever wants a chance to discover more about themselves and about how they can be a better version of themselves. Because when we are better versions of ourselves, the other people around us, our family, our friends, our loved ones, they they'll pick up on some of it. I mean, I have a husband who's a devout Catholic, and he fully believes in Reiki. He fully believes in the power of energy healing. So it doesn't it's I'm not saying I've converted anybody, but he appreciates what else is out there. Because if you imagine there's how many billions of people in the world, there's not just one way of doing everything. And that's what I try to
It's
show people. And they need to find what's right for them. Because not every healing modality works for me or resonates with me, and I don't use all of them. You find what works for you and what speaks to you. A lot of people, we're just so busy. A lot of us don't listen. And that's when I was in my corporate job, I didn't have time to listen. I had meetings to go to, I had phone calls, I had messages, I had to take care of my family when I got home. I didn't listen. I was too busy.
and it's never about conversion or making someone believe a certain way. It's about being in the playground of life and trying and testing and seeing what resonates and seeing what doesn't resonate, and holding on to what does resonate and then being okay with letting go what doesn't resonate
Mhm,
without judgment, without making it less than or more than anything else. It really
mhm.
is honoring your own knowledge and the wisdom that you behold. And that is the clear message that I'm hearing you share throughout this conversation, Corinne. So thank you for that wisdom
You're
to
welcome.
really land. So great. This is such a beautiful podcast where people get to hear our own journeys and get to resonate with where am I at. So for anyone listening and hearing Corinne speak, if you have that awakening from your body that is making you stop, it's making you reflect, it's making you think harder, play. Find what helps you.
Mhm,
There's not one way of doing things. There's a million ways of doing things. So
mhm.
figure it out. What is it? And if you really truly are like, no, this is really resonating and landing and speaking to my heart, reach out to Corinne, please. Because it really is about listening more than this doesn't resonate or this does resonate. It's more like, okay, what does my body tell me?
Mhm.
That reverence from the inside, that knowledge from the inside is what will bring you to the overflow and what has brought you to the overflow.
100%. Absolutely,
We
absolutely.
have a little ritual on this podcast where I actually get to ask you a question that the previous guest has left. And it's always so amazing because every single question has a connection to the conversation we just had. And this is no difference. So, the question I have for you today is what brings you to the point of connection?
Okay. What brings me to the point of connection? Well, connections I feel connections in my gut, like, literally in my gut. They're not I don't turn my brain off. The brain is part of the body, but it's that gut feeling that a lot of people ignore or they don't listen to, and until they get sick or something life-changing happens to them, like it did to me when I was ill. And that's how how connections show up for me. It's actually a physical. It's not mental, it's not emotional, it's a physical feeling for me. And again, like we were talking, everyone's a little different, so it may be different for other people. But, I don't get an itchy nose, I don't get a itchy neck or anything. I feel it I literally in my gut. And if we all take a moment and pay attention to what's going on, we understand that we're drawn to certain situations, we're drawn to certain people, or we're pushed away from them, or we're not interested in them for a reason. So I truly believe that a lot of the connections that we have can be recognized through a physical reaction.
Attentive listening brings attentiveness to your heart, and then you are able to take aligned action.
Mhm.
And that connection of God, source, whatever you believe in,
Yeah,
it really then speaks through you, and you can actually start building a better relationship with yourself more than anything else. For you, it's God. For me personally, it is a ringing in the ear, or I will get chills and like, oh yes, this is beautifully aligned. And that those are the little signals that we have
Mhm.
correlated, that we have said, like, yes, I want my signal this way, I want my signal this way. And that's okay. You can actually change and play with the signals too, but that is for a different conversation. Now, for this conversation, I thank you. Truly thank you, Corinne, for sharing what your journey has brought you and what you are now bringing to people and women in particular to help them assess and reassess as to what the wisdom is that they behold so that attentive listening can become the root of a new discovery for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you are interested in continuing your conversation with Corinne, please click on the link below, reach out, connect, and really give yourself the pleasure and the gift of listening to your signals, your body, your message. Thank you so much, Corinne, for coming on, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
My honor, my honor, my gratitude. Thank you so much, Matina.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Thank you for spending your time here. Sharing your reflections in the comments or passing this conversation along helps this space reach people who are looking for support and don't always know where to turn. Take a breath as you transition back into your day and notice what's present now. I'll meet you again next week.